The first time she blocked my driveway, I thought it was just an accident. The second time, I thought it was a coincidence. But by the 10th time, I realized that was personal. My name's Daniel. I'm a retired firefighter, and for the first time in decades, I finally had peace, or at least I thought I did. My wife and I bought a modest home in a quiet suburban neighborhood after I retired. The kind of place with tree-lined streets, kids playing outside, and neighbors who wave at you when you mow the lawn. But what no one told me was that there was one woman who ruled the neighborhood like a self-appointed queen, a Karen. She wasn't just any neighbor. She was the president of the home, and she made it her mission to control every detail of everyone's life, from the height of your grass to the color of your mailbox. If Karen didn't like it, you'd get a warning letter. At first, I tried to stay out of her way, but things changed the day I parked my old red pickup in my own driveway. It was a vehicle I'd had since my firefighting days, old, dented, but full of memories. That same afternoon, I found a note stuck to my windshield that read, "Greater than this truck is an eyesore. It lowers property values. Please park it elsewhere." I ignored it, but the next morning, when I tried to leave for the hardware store, I found Karen's silver SUV blocking my driveway. No note this time, just her car sitting there like a stubborn statement. I knocked on her door and politely said, "Hey, Karen, could you please move your car? I need to get out." She smirked and replied, "Maybe if you got rid of that rust bucket, you wouldn't have this problem." I stood there, stunned. It wasn't just about the truck, it was about control. She wanted to prove she ran the neighborhood. I told myself to let it go. But day after day, she parked there, sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight. Each time, I called the HOA, and each time, they said they'd look into it. But nothing happened. Why? Because Karen was the HOA. One day, I called the police. They came, but all they could do was issue a polite warning. "It's a private neighborhood," the officer said. "Technically, it's HOA property." So I was stuck, trapped in my own home because one entitled neighbor wanted to make a point. But then, something in me shifted. I'd spent years running into burning buildings, facing chaos and danger. I wasn't about to let a petty neighbor bully me on my own property. That's when the idea came, a mix of stubbornness and creativity. If she wanted to park in front of my driveway, she'd have to go through something first. I spent a weekend sketching plans, measuring the edges of my driveway, and visiting a local stone yard. I ordered 4 massive concrete planters, each weighing nearly a ton. They were beautiful, with a rustic look that matched the landscaping. When they arrived, I borrowed a forklift from a friend's construction company and placed them neatly on both sides of my driveway's entrance, 2 on each side. I filled them with rich soil and colorful flowers, petunias, marigolds, and lavender. They looked wonderful, but more importantly, they were immovable. Karen's SUV couldn't squeeze past them even if she tried. The next morning, I stood on my porch sipping coffee, waiting. Sure enough, at 8:05 a.m., Karen's SUV rolled up. She stopped in front of my house and stared at the new additions. Her jaw dropped. She got out, marched toward me, and said, "You can't put those there. They block the street view." I smiled. "Actually, they're on my property line, perfectly legal, and they add to the neighborhood's charm, don't you think?" She turned red, stormed off, and made a phone call. Within hours, I got an official HOA notice demanding I remove the planters for aesthetic reasons. I ignored it. Then came the threats, fines, letters, warnings. But I knew the law, and I wasn't budging. Weeks went by. Every time she drove past, she'd glare. But the best part, she couldn't park there anymore. My driveway stayed clear for the first time in months. But the story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, a storm hit our town. Heavy rain flooded several driveways, including Karen's. She had tried to build a small retaining wall without a permit, and the water had nowhere to go except straight into her garage. I was outside helping a few neighbors clear debris when I saw her struggling with sandbags. She slipped and fell into the muddy water. Without thinking, I ran over and helped her up. She looked at me, embarrassed and defeated. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. I said, "Because that's what neighbors are supposed to do." We worked side by side for an hour, stacking bags and redirecting water. For the first time, She didn't talk down to me. She just worked quietly. When we finished, she looked at the planters by my driveway, then back at me, and said, "They actually look a broken bar nice." From that day forward, she never blocked my driveway again. In fact, she even complimented the flowers once. Slowly, things changed. She became a little less harsh with others, a little more patient. And as for me, I realized something. Sometimes people lash out because they're unhappy, or lonely, or feel powerless. Karen had lost her husband a few years before. Controlling the home gave her a sense of purpose. I never excused her behavior, but I began to understand it. The planters still stand today, not just as barriers, but as reminders. Reminders that strength doesn't always mean fighting back with anger. Sometimes it means standing your ground with dignity, while still choosing kindness when it counts. Now, whenever I water those flowers, I see Karen walking her little dog down the street. She always waves, and I wave back. Funny thing is, those 4-ton planters that once symbolized defiance have now become symbols of peace, a proof that even the most stubborn walls can eventually bloom into something beautiful. Moral of the story: stand up for yourself, but don't let bitterness take root in your heart. Even when people try to make your life difficult, respond with strength, wisdom, and a touch of grace, because in the end, kindness will always outlast control, and the best revenge is simply living peacefully, on your own terms.